Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Triangles Meditation Group webinar. Today is March 10th, 2025. We're so glad to have all of you joining us here today. We meet here today to support the Triangles work, a project which for nearly 100 years has been carried forward within the field of consciousness and the subtle ethers of our planetary life. This network of light and goodwill has stood now for many generations, and its strength lies in not only the hundreds of servers who perpetuate it daily, but the countless more from the past whose efforts have made the network what it is today. A worldwide beacon of hope and vision, and a great impressing agent whereby the energy of love wisdom is made manifest in human hearts and minds. This redeeming, uplifting energy underlies the outer world of appearance, but by virtue of its magnetism and its moral power, operates to consequential effect in our world. The Triangles Network thus acts as a bridge between the outer world of human activity and the inner world of thought, purpose, and we could say even destiny. It supports the manifestation of the highest principles in man: wisdom, compassion, love, selflessness, responsibility, courage, beauty. The network strengthens the link of every form to its indwelling soul. It pierces through the dim veils of glamour and illusion, and it provides a sure way forward, a path which lies between the pairs of opposites, through the veils of Maya, and straight to the heart of the one who is greater than our whole, yet also within that whole, the one who remains transcendent and immanent. The network functions by virtue of the souls who stand as centers of light, love, and will at the 3 points of every triangle. These souls are the network itself, and it is thus wholly dependent upon the work of each and all Triangle's members. Your contribution to this work is therefore valuable, consequential, and greatly needed today, so thank you. To those joining us today for the first time, a special welcome. I will shortly offer just a brief description of what this work is, but more information can be found on our website, www.triangles.org, and you could also feel free to write or to email to us, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about this work. But in short, Triangles is a service activity which uses the power of thought, prayer, and invocation to uplift and transform consciousness. 3 people agree to link in thought each day. They link up subjectively in meditation, and they visualize themselves as the 3 points of a triangle connected by the energies of light and goodwill. They visualize their triangle within a worldwide network of triangles surrounding the planet. And they sound the great invocation, a world prayer, adding their spiritual contribution to the whole. This webinar aims to energize and vivify the network, but also to introduce new people to this work and to the ideas and the purposes which underlie it. We know that even though it's a very simple practice, it's not always so easy to explain this work in a way that communicates its simplicity and also its efficacy as a means of doing real and lasting good in the world. We invite you, therefore, to invite anyone in your lives you think might be interested in this work or learning more about it to join us on this webinar, which occurs on the second Monday of each month. This webinar also acts as a platform to aid in the forming of new triangles. And so if anyone today is interested in forming a triangle, keep in mind we can have more than one triangle, please put your name in the chat box, and I'm sure we can find 2 others to join you. So today, After just a brief introduction, we will do our meditation on the Great Invocation. Following this, we will hear from longtime Triangles member Sarah Murphy, who will share some thoughts on the theme, the power of words and their meaning, in which she will draw upon her experience as a therapist. We will then close with our meditation in support of the Triangles Network. So now let us take a moment to align as a group and sound the mantra of the new group of world servers. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. Our use of mantrams is based on the occult idea that the secret of all creative forces in the universe lies concealed in the mysteries of vibration and sound, and that behind every creation, whether living or inanimate, lies a creator, some agent or agency, who creates through the power of will, thought, and speech, these three being nearly synonymous in the occult philosophy. The etymology of the word mantra can be immediately seen in its two syllables. Man, meaning man, which comes from manas, which means to think or mind, and tra, which is tool or instrument. A mantram is thus a tool of thought, a sound, syllable, word, or group of words employed by the mind, that is the thinker, the creating agent, towards some end. Mantrams are also known for their ability to produce vibrations, particularly in the subtle ethers, and to carry either a magnetic, that is creative potency, or else a destructive one. But mantrams only become truly operative, that is spiritually consequential, when sounded forth from the realm of causes, or what esotericism refers to as the realm of subjectivity, the world of the soul and of true individuality. When sounded by the soul and carried forward into the grosser vibrations of the physical plane, mantrams produce effects which span the higher and the lower worlds, bringing them into a direct relationship. All things in nature vibrate to their own note or chord. Mantrams tune into this note and, rightly sounded, create a channel of communication between the one using the mantram and the center, the body, the individuality, the agency, the entity, or the force which that mantram embodies. The real power of these mantrams thus lies in their ability to produce relationship, alignment, and unimpeded communication. The Great Invocation is one such mantram, which has been entrusted to us for use. It places humanity in direct contact with divine agencies and energies, and it directs these energies in service through the medium of the human mind, heart, and will, and definitely upon the physical plane. As we now proceed with our meditation on the great invocation, let us keep in mind the special power of these words to create a direct and unimpeachable and a very real and lasting relationship between the mind of God and the mind of man, between the heart of God and every human heart, and particularly between the will of God and humanity's collective will, as it seeks both to discover and then carry out its sacred duty. We begin by linking up in thought as souls, as points of light and love with all those people throughout the world who are part of the Triangle's service work. Visualize the world situation as best you can and see people everywhere glowing with a dim light, with here and there points of brighter light where men and women of spiritual intention and loving hearts are working for their fellow human beings. And then visualize through the creative imagination the vivid light of the spiritual kingdom streaming towards humanity and slowly merging with the light which is already in humanity. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. And now ponder upon the reappearance of the coming world teacher, the Christ. Realize that no matter by what name he may be called in the many world religions, he is still the same great identity. Reflect and speculate upon the possible results of his appearance. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. Endeavor to concentrate your fixed intention to serve and to spread love in your surroundings, realizing that insofar as you can do these things, you are attempting to blend your personal will with the divine will. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. We sound the Om, dedicating the threefold group personality to the working out of the divine plan. Thank you, everyone. I'd now like to invite Sarah Murphy. Sarah, if you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk. And what I have to say really dovetails with what you were talking about in your introduction today. And that reminded me, I used to have a meditation group years ago that met regularly. And among the half a dozen or so people that used to show up, it was funny, we would meditate on a particular word or concept. And usually half the group would have like one thought in common and the other half of the group would have another experience in common. It was really interesting to see how we do kind of tap into the collective mind. And now we're intentionally working at this group consciousness. So I think it's pretty cool. So the thought behind my talk today is about the power of words and their meaning. We know that energy follows thought and words carry or embody thought. And that leads me to wonder, how does the energy behind the words we use make a difference? I think that this question has relevance for those of us who are doing triangles work and sounding the Great Invocation regularly. The Great Invocation, as we know, is a word of power, and we can use that to, I think, help inaugurate and hasten the inauguration of maybe the new age. And I think that it's worthwhile considering the extent to which we are correctly using the words of this powerful invocation, because we know that simply reciting them is not enough. And history can serve as our guide. I mean, maybe own personal experience too. I've definitely had my days of going through the Great Invocation and realizing like, oh, I just said words and didn't think about them. So I make myself do it again. And I suspect I might not be the only person who can get kind of rote with things. But more interestingly, history can be our guide with respect to the people who came before, the founding students of the Arcane School, for example. We have evidence in the Tibetans' words that they actually fell short in using the invocation. In Externalization of the Hierarchy in 1957, the Tibetan is quoted saying that if the Great Invocation had been used as intended, the war could have been averted. And he was urging his students to make the sounding of the Great Invocation dynamic and with, quote, affirmative will. And that in doing so, we could precipitate the release of energy that could have caused, quote, an immediate defeat of the forces of aggression. That is so powerful to think of this tiny group of the people in the early days of the Arcane School could have made such a difference. So how about us today? Are we fully making use of the energy and the intention behind the words we use? I wonder what would the Tibetan and other masters of the wisdom have to say about our work with the Great Invocation. Sometimes I'm sure I'm being called to task, not personally, but by my own higher self. And more importantly, because there's usually room for improvement, how can we do better? People who study the ageless wisdom know that the Christ will reappear, that in fact he is reappearing. They know that the new age is dawning. The issue for us gathered in this group and more broadly incarnated today, I think is more a question of timing. How can we rightly use the opportunity before us to do our part in the one work as efficiently as possible? And part of the answer to that question may be informed by the idea that we remember every Thursday, for those of us who do it, when we meditate on the reappearance of the Christ. The Tibetan reminds us esoteric students need the heart approach as well as the mental approach in order to make this meditation the powerful instrument which it can be. So energizing the Great Invocation with that intention, heart energy, affirmative will, can bring more power to it and give it more efficacy. We know, again, these are words of power, and as such, they are an invocative demand. So if we only sound the Great Invocation half-heartedly, then we're not making the most of our opportunity, and we deprive it of its potential and deprive ourselves of the potential. It seems to me that this year, even more than ever, we are called to step up our game. It's 2025. We are told that the hierarchy convenes this year, as it does on the 25th year of every century, to plan the next phase of unfolding for humanity. Perhaps we, disciples and aspirants on the physical plane, might rededicate ourselves to thoughtfully sounding the great invocation with deliberation and full commitment to its meaning at this auspicious time. And perhaps as well, we can re-energize each other and our fellow human beings and do our part to move things along. Again, energy follows thought, words embody thought. And this is a theme that I see as a therapist in my practice all the time, that words really shape us. For example, negative self-talk is defeating because it's self-fulfilling. At a super basic level, it's impossible to be cheerful when we are thinking about what's wrong. It's impossible to be friendly when we are consumed by self-doubt and an expectation of rejection. We can't be calm if we're telling ourselves how anxious we are. Rooting out and repatterning these words that form the internal dialogue is one of the most change-producing aspects of therapy. When we change our inner dialogue, we begin to see things differently and change how we feel about them. And of course, how we feel about and think about things matters. So I work mostly with people who've been diagnosed with diseases and in particular with cancer. Over the years, I've met some amazing people, and one of them who is unforgettable was Kathy. She lived with advanced ovarian cancer for 15 years, outliving her prognosis by a decade. And she was one of the most positive people I have known, cheerfully facing her disease and the physical limitations it imposed. During the course of her illness, she fell in love and got married. She was a writer with a dream of being published, and she did get published right before she passed away. She was determined to what she called a good death, to have what she called a good death. She was courageous and cheerful, despite the fact that she was living with dying, as I think of it. Kathy had something in her that allowed her to beat the odds. Of course, truly, some people with diagnoses like this understand truly that their productive time in this incarnation has come to an end, and they gracefully make their transition to the other side to continue their service and learning over there. But for the ones who do live long and even become disease-free, there seems to be a set of commonalities, and many hinge on how they think and feel. There's a book by Kelly Turner, it's called Radical Remission, and it documents the results of survey data of people who beat the odds and survived dire cancer diagnoses. And it lays out these commonalities. And the first couple of them are not within the scope of mental health practice or even spiritual inquiry, changing diets and using supplements. But most of the factors have a place in the therapy room and have a place in the human spirit realm. And these involve releasing negative emotions, increasing positive feelings, relying on one's intuition, advocating for oneself, embracing social support, having a strong reason to live, and enhancing spirituality. It seems to me that these are also helpful and healthy principles for everybody, for the collective. So continuing with the thread of cancer, I'd like to share a quote that I came across years ago when I showed my undergraduate and community college students a video about epigenetics. So while people are often looking for the gene that causes this or that disease, usually there isn't one single gene at play. And what's more, not everyone who has the same gene or genetic mutation will get the disease. The epigenome is the protein covering outside our DNA strands that turns on or turns off the expression of a gene or its mutant form. And this is what the study that was a cancer trial was working on. So the researcher was featured in the film, and he said something that I think of so often recently. His approach was like trying to coax a cell by working on its epigenome. And he said, in this really gentle, loving way, it's like I'm telling the cell, hey, you're a human cell. You're not supposed to act like this. So I don't know if it strikes you guys the way that it strikes me, but I often think of us as human cells in the body of God. And I can imagine somebody saying to certain of us, hey, you're a human. You're not supposed to act like this. For those of us who are in the arcane school and for everyone who studies the ancient wisdom, we understand that the seventh ray is coming, and with it, cooperation, understanding, a knowing that none of us is well if the least of us is suffering. We know that the Christ has made his determination to reappear. And even more to the practical point, we know that there's work to do and that we are here to do it. As humanity is evolving, the hierarchy turns its attention to other work and leaves to us, the living, the work of impression and expression of certain great ideas that will form the backbone of Aquarian thought. And just in case anybody wants to feel a little complacent, I want to share another quote from Externalization of the Hierarchy, where the Tibetan says, I said earlier that the war could have been averted from expression on the physical plane had the disciples and the aspirants of the world measured up to their opportunity and responsibilities. The great invocation was rendered relatively powerless. Those who used it turned it into a peace prayer. It was instead a great spiritually militant invocative demand. This must not happen with this stanza of the invocation. And just to be clear, the stanza is the four that we're talking about all the time. That's the last stanza. An earlier stanza or version of the Great Invocation includes these following lines, speaking of love, will, and active aid. Come forth, Almighty One, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. This great defending wall, we're still building it. And obviously the rule of evil has not yet ended. We've consistently been admonished to make the sounding of the great invocation dynamic and with affirmative will to precipitate the release of energy that could have caused and presumably still could cause an immediate defeat to the forces of aggression. So I close my talk with an invitation. Let's rededicate ourselves. This group of thinkers, meditators, students, let's be dedicated to the great task remaining before us. Energy follows thought, words carry thought. Let's re-energize our use of the great invocation.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I really appreciate all of that. That was really marvelous. Let me get this up there. Yeah. So we have a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes or 8 to 10 minutes or so for the audience, those participants who are on the call, on the webinar. If you'd like to ask any questions or make a comment, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you and allow you to do so. You're, of course, free to type in the chat box as well. So I just wanted to, while everyone's collecting their thoughts, Sarah, I just wanted to ask you a question, actually. And I really do appreciate you bringing up this interesting discussion for our webinar about the really drawing on your therapeutic work with cancer patients and the great invocation as a word of power. Maybe on the very, very surface, those two seem very distinct, but actually, if you really look at the core of what they aim to do, there's quite a bit of similarity in many ways. I was wondering if you have ever had an experience with, and I don't have much experience in therapy, so I really don't know exactly how it works or how you sort of structure your sessions, but has there ever been a session where you said some particular word or combination of words which you feel like really has a magical effect on the person you're with. Like, is there anything in the words themselves? Of course, it's the
Yeah,
behind the words. It actually
Michael,
releases something. Go ahead. Yeah.
it's so interesting that you say that, and I never would have used exactly that term. The thing that magical, but I think it really is. And the proof is this. I often have the experience where a client says to me, "Oh, I'll never forget. It made such an impact when you said,"
Hmm.
and then they quote me. And I think I don't remember having said that, although it sounds 100% plausible, like something I could imagine saying. But I know that sometimes there's this impact that comes through the word, the energy behind it, the intentionality. And I think that a lot of times there's communication happening at higher levels that is coming out of our mouths and into our ears, but it's, I'm a conduit for something that's not coming out of my lower mind and my brain functioning for sure. I had recently a client who is going to start working with me. We haven't gotten started yet. She'd had another clinician that she worked with for a long time, and they had become really, I don't know, worked together for so long, they became maybe too emotionally close. And when the woman got diagnosed with cancer, her therapist started crying, and she told me I was comforting my therapist, and I realized I need to talk to somebody else. So there are different roles and ways of using energy and emotion. That's like sometimes there's a little bit of a play on emotion, but always trying to help people think and move into a higher, um, up into the mind or up into more of a higher mind kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the words we use in therapy can be super powerful. And then
Hmm.
that, restructuring the internalized speech. So many people are walking around with this negative self-talk that's usually something that they internalize from bad experiences from their childhoods. And we could have theories about why one would be incarnated in such a situation. Repatterning that stuff, that's where magic really happens.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. You said the specific words you said were sort of unassuming, and that for you they weren't remarkable, but for the person who was affected by them, obviously they were
Yeah.
such that they remembered them verbatim what you had said.
Yep. And
Um,
telling me that I said it. I'm like,
yeah,
well, did
yeah,
I?
that's
Okay.
very interesting. Because the idea, I mean, sort of the occult philosophy says there are certain words, syllables that literally have themselves a certain power. You know, there are sort of words of power that even when pronounced in a certain tone or key can have certain phenomenological or even psychic effects.
Yeah.
Um, but you wonder if, you know, what's really what's really the word and what's really the effect. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm. Mhm.
I know oftentimes in like my own meditations, for example, I'm doing some reading or some thinking or pondering, and suddenly there's some sort of thought or perspective or recognition that sort of drops in, and then suddenly it allows for some sort of alignment or some sort of higher scaffolding upon which to sort of climb a little higher up the ladder or some sort of like revelation about some problem or something like that. And it's almost as if like that, um, it's almost as if those are the words of power, those special those little things that connect us to something, it's that's really what the word of power is. It's something that connects us to where it is we need to go. It's
Yeah,
just
I
so
think that's
beautiful.
another good example of how words have this energy and can create vibrational change and consciousness change. There is this little subfield in the world of psychology called neuro-linguistic programming. I'm not an expert on it, but I do know that there were some super effective clinicians, and that Virginia Satir apparently was one of them. And people were really curious about, what do these people do that makes such an impact on their clients? And they kind of cataloged it all. And it has become, I think, sometimes in the wrong hands, like a way of manipulating people, because they understand how we can phrase things to get people to take action. And so when you were talking about the syllables and words that can have such an effect, I think that probably a lot of it is still obscured behind this curtain, because when we get really data driven about it, it can become very materialistic.
Of
So
course, yeah, good
yeah,
point.
interesting.
There's a few hands raised. I think we'll go with Curtis and Catherine, and then we'll probably move on to our meditation. Curtis, if you could go ahead and unmute. Curtis, are you there? We can't hear you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, now
Can
we
you hear me?
can. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good. So one of the things that occurs to me is that as disciples, we need to hold ourselves receptive in those situations where we are interacting with others in need, whether this is in a therapeutic situation or just wherever. For those words to come through, and when they do come through, we need to say them with full intent, because we are vessels and we are given the opportunity to make those changes that come through us. That's all.
Thank you so much, Curtis.
Thanks, Curtis.
Catherine Cruz.
Excuse me. Thank you, Michael. I just think this is a wonderful webinar, and I'm so delighted with the topic and what's been said. And I wondered if anyone could comment on how using the Great Invocation within the triangles work contributes to its effectiveness in what did you say? Precipitating the release of energies that could change the world. So that's my question.
You said use the great invocation in meditation to
In
precipitate.
the triangles, Michael.
In the triangles work.
Oh, in the triangles. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sarah, would you like to answer that?
I'll give my impression, that I'm sure that you can add more detail to it, Michael, that part of the work of the Aquarian age and our work is changing the geography, that's not geometry of the planet, from the square to the triangle. And so when we do that, when we sound the great invocation in triangle, we're helping to build this network of triangles, which is going to be like the upgrade energetically. But also very practically, we're empowering the words that we speak, because we're speaking with two others, so there's more emphasis to it. So those are my two hot takes.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, that's great. I would just add that we really can't underestimate, we shouldn't underestimate how consequential it is to really work from what esotericism calls the world of causes, which is the world of the soul. To really work from that world, really portent with real spiritual power, has a tremendously significant and profound effect. And those of us who are more into sort of occult philosophy and cosmology and that sort of thing, there's more, there's a bit more to that, but it's just we can't look at it. The futility comes when we look at it from the angle of the personality. What could a personality or the concrete mind on its own, or sort of the heart, on its own? We think of the heart of the personality. What could it possibly do? Or what could even the group of a bunch of hearts and lower minds do? That's how, things we think of in the outer world are normally accomplished. We think of them being accomplished by an outer means, but this is really a totally different way of working. Unfortunately, I don't know if we have time for any more hands. Larry, Suzanne, and Peter, just because we now have the meditation at the end, and it's really important we leave, full time for that, because it's really the most important part of what we're doing here is this triangles meditation. So I don't want it to feel rushed or anything. But I invite you all that had your hand raised, if you just want to jot down your thoughts, you can share them in the chat, or you can even email them to us. And I'll just put our email here, and and then we can, we're happy just to read that, and we'll send it to Sarah, of course, as well, if you email it to us.
I'll put my email in the
Sarah, was
chat.
there any final words you wanted to say before we move on?
No, just thank you for your attention and for the support. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Hope to have you back on again sometime. Energizing the planetary network of triangles. We come together as a group unity upon the mental plane. We identify as souls, with the world group functioning through 3 planetary centers as the triangle of light. We extend that identification through the soul to the new group of world servers, to the hierarchy, and to the Christ, that transcendent point of synthesis at the center of every triangle, and to the triangle of energies standing behind the Christ. Identify the center Shambhala, the center of purpose and power. We recognize the 3 streams of cosmic energy within Shambhala where the will of God is known, using the dedication. In the center of the will of God I stand. Naught shall deflect my will from his. I implement that will by love. I turn towards the field of service. I, the triangle divine, work out that will within the square and serve my fellow men. Visualize a network of lighted triangles underlying the entire outer world of physical life and events. We see the network linking all triangles units and relating all points of light throughout the world. See the network relating the world of spiritual realities, the hierarchy, to the world of experiences, humanity, and acting as a channel of distribution within humanity for the spiritual energies pouring from hierarchy. See the network transforming the planetary etheric vehicle to receive and circulate the energies of the soul and the spiritual triad. Will, love, light, Atma, Buddhi, Manas. Realize that the energies of light, love, and the will to good, evoked by all triangles workers and pulsating through the planetary network of triangles, are having an inevitable effect within the three worlds of human evolution, lifting human consciousness and helping to create a path of light for the feet of the Christ. reflect on the purpose, function, and right development of the Triangles network as an hierarchical activity. Blended with the group, stand with positive intent as a station of light, of radiant light, within the network of light and goodwill. Sound the adapted great invocation, or the original if you'd like, directing the triple energies through the Triangles network and throughout the consciousness of humanity. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. From the center, where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the human race, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you all. The announcements for our upcoming events are on your screen. Just to note the upcoming full moon meditation meetings this Thursday, the Goodwill Meditation Group webinar at the end of the month. Note that the European and UK, the British times, are 1 hour earlier to account for the offset in daylight savings. And then next month for the Triangles Meditation Group webinar, we are back on task at 3 p.m. EDT, 8 p.m. BST, and 2100 Central European Summertime. Thank you all, and see you next month.